Hello, everyone, and welcome aboard. It is the 17th of July, and my name is Jeff, and I'm coming to you live from Tasmania, Australia. Almost the bottom of the world, but not quite. You can nearly see it from here, though. I'll be joined by Ash, who's coming to us from Brighton in the UK. He'll be here in just a tick, and we will be taking a look at some charts. We'll be talking about all sorts of things, trading, and hopefully you can follow along with us and see if we can find some trades and maybe we can make some money today. That would be good. Let me take a look at what's happening around the world in terms of news events, because we do like to know what's happening in the wonderful world of news, not necessarily to trade it, but maybe to trade around it. Let's catch up with what happened yesterday, yesterday being Tuesday, and we had some news out. I'm going to go through the high profile stuff. The average earnings index out of Great Britain was good, a beat. The claimant count was a miss. The unemployment rate was equal. I said I was going to go through the major news, didn't I? Okay, well, how about semi-major? The German economic sentiment was a miss. The fact that Bank of England's Governor Carney actually spoke went straight over my head, but I think Ash probably will be all over that when he joins us shortly. The US figures that came out a little bit later in retail sales terms were bang on previous, but a beat in terms of forecast. And that doesn't seem to have done the US dollar any harm at all, as we saw the major currencies fall around that. Oh, well, and since, I suppose, maybe even prior to that announcement yesterday. What else happened? I'll skip all the. Of course, Jerome Powell spoke, as did his colleague, Mr. Evans. No idea what they said either, as I was in slumberland at the time. What have we got today? I suppose we've got CPI figures, year on year CPI figures, to boot out of London town in about 2 hours and 50 minutes from now. And we've also got what? CPI figures out of Canada, tipped to be no good. CPI figures out of London are tipped to be okay. And that's pretty much it in terms of major announcements for the day. I don't see too much there that would interrupt my trading. I say that because it's going to be very, very difficult to trade the pound anyway, given what happened yesterday, as it continued its flight away from anything that looked remotely like a buying spree. So let's start there, I suppose, with cable. Interestingly enough, I've been trying to get long cable for what appears to be the longest time here, or even way back here. I think that one actually failed. This one I've got to take profit out of. This one I've got to take profit out of. But despite my willingness to trade long every time since, we haven't even looked like getting entered, as price just ran away from us each and every day. I didn't trade this leg up. There'd be a good reason for that. I can't think of what it is off the top of my head, to be fair, and it's only 2 weeks ago. It's last week, in fact. No, I didn't get that leg up, did I? No, bit of a shame that. And of course, we've come straight off the weekly pivot, and we have shot through like Murgatroyd. And Murgatroyd, I can't even remember who Murgatroyd was, but I'm pretty sure he shot through at some stage, and so too has pound US dollar. So much so that it has disrupted my plans and taken out this double bottom here that I was eyeing off with much joy. It now appears as though that's not even going to hold. on the weekly. Although, it's like hump day, we've got 2 days to go in the week, anything can happen yet. And, it wouldn't surprise me at all now that it's completely untradeable to the long side, that today is exactly that day where we will see a rally. It will go without me, however. I can't possibly trade now long until I see a reversal pattern of some kind. It's a complete reset for me. I have to wait till the market actually resets, gives me something like that, and then a higher low.
It won't be today, I wouldn't have thought, mate.
Hello, mate.
Hey, how you doing? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Won't be today. We're more selling.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there was a report yesterday that Boris Johnson has a plan to shut down Parliament so he can get through no deal. So there is little chance, I would suspect, that the pound is going to rally until we get Boris Johnson in and actually find out what his plans are. He's playing pretty hard right now. There's another report this morning that he's looking to crush Labour in an early election. And if that's the case, then I think he's some of the reason he might be doing it is actually not to crush Labour, but to try and crush some of the Remainers in his party, because there are Remainers in his party who have said that they will bring down a Boris government if he pursues a no-deal Brexit. But if they are not around anymore, they're not in office anymore, then he's going to have free reign to really do what he wants. So he's moving.
Given that the Tories would have to be on the nose, you would think, given what we've seen the last 2.3 years or something.
What do you mean on the nose? Well, they'd have to all be in agreement.
Completely unpopular, wouldn't they?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Oh, I mean, Boris Johnson is a polarizing candidate. There's no two ways about it. But you see, he's in a really good position, and he's not stupid, Boris Johnson, and this could be where he excels. Is that the people that are likely to vote for Remain are likely to shift over to the Liberal Democrats, because Labour have just got such an awful position on Brexit. But by the same token, the Liberal Democrats are unlikely to get in and cause any kind of upset. So their vote will be probably split a little bit with Labour. So then you kind of reduce some of the Labour seats, the biggest opposition seats, just by that fact alone. And even though Boris may not be particularly popular, if he's splitting the vote, he may end up with a decent majority in Parliament, because the other people that are 100% Brexit will vote for Boris, and they will vote for the Tories. So it could actually end up being a very, very clever move, where Theresa May wasn't able to get that majority because people, there was so much flap about with Theresa May. You didn't really know what you were getting with a Conservative-led Theresa May. You don't really know what you're getting with a Jeremy Corbyn Labour Party. So that was probably reflected in the polls, but with a bit more certainty, I wouldn't be surprised if Boris does actually pull off a pretty decent majority.
Okay.
So I mean, the only caveat to all this is that at this stage he's not in power. I mean, it looks like a shoo-in. And that will be fascinating if he doesn't get in. I don't know what will happen then. I don't think the pound will do particularly well if Boris doesn't get in, because I think we're just back to more uncertainty. But one thing as a trader that Boris will give is certainty. At least we will know. He's very chaotic and haphazard, but on the big issue, we know where he stands, and we know at this stage anyway what he's prepared to do. And I think he will probably do it as well. I don't think he's bluffing, or if he is bluffing, then he will see through his bluff. He doesn't seem to me the sort of person that backs down on the bluff. I suppose that makes it not a bluff. So I think he will probably see it through.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, that be as it may, I agree with. Well, as I said, it'd be impossible for me to trade the pound long today anyway. It was certainly possible yesterday and the day before that, but now no, it's very much gone. Pardon me, a gone deal. So I won't be looking to trade it long at all, which means I won't be looking to trade it. I wouldn't think, because I can't short either. It's an NLNS situation for me. I haven't got too much actually, but I'll just continue along a merry path until unless you've got something urgent.
No, mate, nothing pressing here. It's we'll talk about the FTSE in a minute. Interesting move overnight with the FTSE that
Okay.
yeah, that might be worth discussing in a little while, but nothing pending.
Okay. Well, the one trade that we did get triggered into yesterday was euro, and we have hit TP1 on the euro. But it's really difficult to say what happens next, to be fair, because we are in a situation. Actually, I'll go back to the daily chart. It's easier to explain on the daily chart. The daily chart has, as I said yesterday, two things going for it. Or, sorry, I could make a case for either the bears or the bulls, and we chose the bears, and I'll show you why in a second. But the bulls were showing potential here, and still are. That hasn't erased itself yet. We've got a triple bottom sitting here. We've got a higher low. We've got a higher high. We've got the higher low, the other higher high, and a higher low again, albeit very, very close to the previous. That said, we had come back into the range, and this is what gets me all the time. As soon as we do, I'm looking for a higher low, sorry, a lower high. And we got that lower high in a strategic place off the weekly pivot, and that's the candle that we traded yesterday on the daily charts. And as I said, we've hit TP1 here. That's the red line you see. We've got to get through this confluence area now. We've got a little trade line sitting underneath us, a little support trade line, and we've got that horizontal level, which is around about the 112, the figure mark. So that's going to be the tail of the tape today. I think that's the key level for euro dollar, 112. And if we can get through it, then our TP2 is looking pretty good down there at testing those lows as well. You may look to, in fact, close the whole position there if you are trading this with me. I've protected myself. I took a third off at DS3 yesterday and moved my stops accordingly just above the weekly pivot. So I'm in a no lose situation here, which of course is pretty cool. We like to do that. And now if we can hit TP2, but as I said, there's a little bit of work to do on that before we get there. But if you haven't protected yourself here and you're still at risk, there is a definite potential for this to bounce at this point. How far it goes, great question. That I cannot answer, but I'll leave it up to you as how you manage your stop loss on that one.
So you're going for a long in the euro.
No. We went short yesterday.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Trading that bar there.
Okay, I might show you something on the. Well, in fact, as we're on the euro, have you kind of done that? What you were going to say about the trade?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I've now protected myself because there is a potential for this to bounce off this confluence area. How far, I don't know. So if it goes to my stop, then it will be a no lose situation.
Yeah, I just want to kind of like just show you something with the euro because I find I was having a good look through the charts yesterday. Just thought I'd kind of get myself back aware of what's going on, and this is what I found, which I thought was pretty good. But yeah, what I found with the euro, and I quite like this because really, after looking through, now this is a monthly chart, and this is what I was after with the euro. After looking through yesterday of all the charts and the information, and really I was focusing on the monthly chart. I settled on the euro as a really interesting area and a really interesting chart, because on the monthly chart we are in a downtrend. Really interesting. We're still in a downtrend. There's a lower high there. There's a lower low there, and this bar that took off yesterday has not taken out this area here. So we're still in a downtrend. And my thoughts on the euro was, I'd love to see what this bar suggests, because if this bar ends up being bearish, then there's a suggestion we come all the way back down to this point here. Now, there's a possibility that it's, you know, with this kind of chart pattern, there's a possibility that it does actually put the brakes on at this point somewhere and starts to go up. But I really like your trade, and I really like how early you are, because, and I think you're right with those stops as well. Because, you know, if we're focusing on those short-term time frames, they basically tell us the same as the monthly, because the monthly is suggesting that there could be a bounce here, and with a push to the downside and then a wick that takes us back up there, that would suggest that we're going higher. But with a push to the downside, which effectively takes out this low here, that starts to suggest to me that there's much lower to go with the euro. And again, this could be a Brexit story. So I think your trade is a really, really good one, and I think you're absolutely right with your stops as well. Just looking at this, I mean, we're still, you know, you were saying that we've still got quite a bit of the week left. We've still got quite a lot of the month left as well. So there's still plenty of time here for things to turn around. But I really like you know, what could happen in the next 2 weeks if we break down this week. Then so far this week we've had, I guess, a hold around about this double bottom. So you know, again, we need to see what this bar ends up looking like. But if it takes out this area down here, that's going to suggest we get another week of possibly it hits the lows, comes back up, and flips down again. So so I think that there's a decent chance that we could get some downside with the euro, and it's just allowing the next week and a bit, or 2 weeks if you like, to close out and see what happens. But love the trade on that one, mate, because you know, this really could be a cracker, couldn't it? If it goes, it's going a long way. There's some open water there, effectively.
Yeah, look, a few things that I did consider at the time when I was looking at this short, and one of them was it was showing me a false break of both the top of the rectangle, but also this channel. We got through it, but we couldn't sustain it. We put in this. It's not quite a. Is that a evening star for you?
Let's have a look.
On the weekly chart.
This here.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good evening star, and it did take us back to lows. The fact that this one
and then
wasn't able. Yeah, in the opposite direction, it wasn't, because really with this bar here, that's a if you like, it's a setup to the upside, or a potential.
For me,
yeah, yeah, because it almost sort of reacts the same as this little bar. But what was interesting?
Failed evening star, right?
No. This would have been a genuine evening star. But then when we get this, because you know, the evening star completed, but this bar was the interesting one because it didn't cut in, by the looks of things, more than 50% of this range. So it almost becomes, this week, I think people would have been looking to go long off the back of this bar, looking at that as a you know, as a potential hold area, but it didn't break the highs, you know, of the previous week. So that's where people would have been triggered in. I would suspect, you know, some people would have tried to get in a bit earlier, but it didn't break the highs, and it's come all the way back down again. So it's really putting this one under stress. You know, testing these lows again is a fascinating area. You know, there's going to be people that are happy to try and pick up the long, but if they get swept out here, then I would suspect we're going down at least to these lows. And then if we retest that area, then the suspicion from my point, if we break down and we close down here, is that will just be a retest, and we fall, you know, significantly lower from that point. So I think the euro is under a lot of pressure here, and it does need to hold this area. But it looks like the long isn't on until we do break this particular point. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen in the next couple of days. It's got some work to do. Obviously, it could do, but it's got some work to do to get up there, and what's going to be the catalyst to get us all the way up there and through. So I really like the euro. I don't see how anybody could be convinced that this is in an uptrend right now, because every single time frame from monthly right through to 4 hourly is suggesting downside.
I agree.
You know, and that's another potential area. If you know, if you did get stopped out, there's obviously another potential area up here on the 4 hour that may well see some further downside as well. I'm not sure I'd be so keen if we did get the bounce because of the potential that you know that could be we could be looking at on that monthly in the end. But I like how the euro is unfolding so far. So you know, another 2 weeks and this really could be a brilliant trade to the downside. It's got to break through here is the issue, isn't it? But if it does, it's gone.
Yep, there's plenty of legs available if it does actually hold that bearish position underneath 112, and I'd be more than happy if that were the case. Pardon me. That would make for a nice one. The other one I was interested in, mate, today was CAD yen, and always for the same reasons, because I've got market structure here on my chart, and when I've got market structure, that means I can actually trade. And at this point in time, what it's showing me is a big, on this hourly chart, mind you, a big consolidation area from what, the first week of the month to where we are now. So we have gone into a fairly decent consolidation pattern there, and you can see by the daily bars that we're going absolutely nowhere. But when we drill down into a smaller time frame, that gives us opportunities, and the opportunities are to trade off the bottom towards the top and trade off the top towards the bottom. All we need to see is something that suits us, of course, and we've got a little tweezer bottom sitting here. We've got a rally to the daily pivot, and we've got the opportunity to bounce off that and form a higher low in this area. That area is not that flash, I've got to say, in terms of confluence, but there is a little bit through here that suggests that it might be a little bit of a bounce point. It's done it before here. It's bounced off it here. It's not a King Kong level, I've got to say, but if we were to come down here and put in the higher low in that area, I'd be quite happy. So I'll be looking to trade CAD yen long if we do get that. I don't want it to go yet, because it'll have to go without me if that's the case. But yeah, I'd like to see it down here. If it did go, it's impossible for me to trade. I don't want to trade at this level. I need it down here. Sorry,
yeah. Another, I think another interesting one with CAD yen. When we go again back to the monthly, can you see my charts all right?
Yep.
Yeah, great. So when we go back to the monthly, you know, again, it's at this level. So we got as you say, the double bottom down here. I find this bar really interesting, and I wonder whether it's actually going to end up looking like this and a bit of a doji, and then actually look into next month to see which way it breaks, because this one is right on top of, you know, forgetting that that level you got. It's kind of it's near this this trend line here. It's through. So it could be that that if we push down a little bit, that we manage to catch a bid on this one, and we continue to the upside, because it's a decent bar, isn't it, on CAD yen? I mean, that's a that is a, what do they call this, piercing pattern? But I can't. Yeah, I can't remember what the bullish term is, because both the dark cloud cover is also a bit of a piercing pattern. But this is a fairly bullish bar, but you'd really want to see what happened by the end of this month. But when we look down to those shorter time frames, I mean, let's think about the daily rather than the weekly. The daily is suggesting that we do have just this area that it's actually managed to get through. That looks like a pretty good trend line to me. It's maybe could even be a little bit tighter than that, actually. Yeah, it looks like it's there. It looks like that's where the trend line is there. So if it does start to push to the downside, I mean, it looks, you know, that's a daily chart. So from what I see here, there may well be a move down here, or I suppose it could actually hold this point here. It doesn't look like there's a confluence area now, but coming down maybe a little bit further on CAD yen, I would be with you. I think that there is a possibility for some upside. That looks like a decent price to me at 81.91. Now I know you're looking at shorter term time frames, so it's a completely different play. But you know, from a longer term perspective, this looks like a pretty solid level that could hold this one up if it did start to move to the downside again. And I think there's a chance it could do that. It's been unable to get through here the last few days, and another weakish looking bar yesterday where it attempted to get beyond the highs and it pushed back down again. So there could be a little bit more downside here before we start to move up. And I think waiting for your setup looks to be sensible because of this. But I think that there's some upside in CAD yen, but maybe just not yet.
Yeah, I always take a look at what oil's doing when I'm trying to trade the CAD, and oil's at an interesting point today. As a matter of fact, it is at a reasonably strong support level, but the last 3-4 days have all been bearish, and yesterday in particular was particularly bearish, and we've got a monthly pivot beckoning underneath us. So yeah, on a bigger picture, I don't know if I'm too keen to go beyond the top of my range at the moment.
Always difficult, isn't it, on a on a day where on a Wednesday in some respect, because the picture's probably the least clear because we are in the middle of the week. Because oil again, a weekly bar that looks like this by Friday would suggest that there's some downside due maybe in oil looking into next week, but which would probably follow through with that CAD yen. But yeah, you're right. There is a support line here on the daily chart by the looks of things, and it looks like we could get another boost to the upside. But I wonder how far that's going to go. But yeah, there's certainly a trade long, isn't there, right now?
How are we fundamentally on oil? I haven't been following it too much. I know we've had OPEC meetings. I don't know what that.
Yeah, there was a tweet yesterday from Donald Trump which said that the China trade, he could still slap tariffs on China, and that seemed to put some pressure on the oil markets along with the FTSE 100 as well. So there seems to be a little bit of pressure out there that we haven't seen the follow through yet, and we don't know what the reports are today. But there's a little, the market's a little bit jittery. We're just starting to see the FTSE 100 open up and push back. Trying to attempt to push back to the upside. Not a completely clear bar here. That doesn't give us a lot of clarity, but I thought that was quite an interesting bar in the end yesterday. That we pushed forward and were unable to get through the highs, and we pushed all the way back down again. It looks like it may attempt one more time to push up there, but this has reacted very similarly to the oil story, to the tweet from Donald Trump as oil has. But this is still looking like it's got some legs to the upside. But I'm interested to see how this morning is going to go with the FTSE, whether there is any hangover from that particular tweet, because this market has been so strong, it's managed to sweep aside a lot of the bad news and bad data and everything else. The other thing that was interesting yesterday was the retail sales were stronger than expected. And if the market is pushing forward because they are anticipating a significant rate cut, they're obviously anticipating a rate cut, but if they're anticipating a significant rate cut, decent numbers from America don't really point to that. It may be fairly irresponsible of Jerome Powell to give anything but a 25 basis point cut. I think, and if that's the case, maybe we're not headed for this 100 basis point cut, which people are looking for over the course of the next 6 to 12 months. So Donald Trump coming out and tweeting decent numbers from America. They don't really support a rally at this particular point, so I'm not too keen on the FTSE upside. But I suspect, technically speaking, that there could be another push long. But let's see what happens if it does get up there and see if it's able to break through these levels, or whether that's the point that it starts to fail, or whether this actually could be the end of the rally. Because if this is down to those Donald Trump tweets, then I suspect oil may well be affected in the same way, and we could start to see oil push down. And the thing is with all this is that what we've seen in the FTSE certainly and oil is a fairly parabolic move. It's not sort of like quite as aggressive as say a move like this, where it just there's pretty much no angle at all. It's just it's practically vertical on its way up. This is a fairly parabolic move to the upside. It's been quite unabated to the upside at that point. We've got the same with the S&P, where it's moved and moved and moved. It's one of those things that because the market is so confident, I don't think it's going to take too much to maybe topple the confidence if there is further comment from Donald Trump about Chinese trade wars, and the American numbers continue to be good, and people start continue to be concerned about the potential for a rate cut being what they want. So with oil, with the S&P, and with the FTSE, I suppose that the move with oil has been a bit different, but that's aggressive, isn't it? When you kind of see it up here, bang, it's come straight down again. That's got to put the jitters up the market a little bit. When oil can be moving quite happily to the upside, and then boom, upside, bang. It's kind of, it could be a really sweeping move that takes us beyond this level. And if that's the case, then I suspect there's probably some open water down. Because not forgetting that the overall picture with oil is that it is an out of favor commodity in many respects as we move towards protecting the climate. So aside from things with OPEC and Donald Trump, there's a wider kind of there's a wider potential message when it comes down to things like some of these fossil fuels and how we use them.
I wonder when that actually kicks in, Ash. I mean, obviously we're a long way from not needing oil, but I wonder when that actually happens. What oil looks like in terms of a price, and what all fossil fuels look like in terms of price.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think that's an interesting question, mate, because when it comes down to something like that, the pressure on governments seem to be kind of closing in. The government. What's that, mate? Sorry.
So it's a foregone conclusion. It's something we know will happen, but we don't know what sort of time frame there is. And if technology is anything to go by, have a look at the last 50 years. We've come a hell of a long way in a very short period of time. So who's to say that in 5 years' time we won't have batteries that can store solar power and wind power and wave power and you name it power. So effectively that we don't need to generate base load from coal. How that could happen, and oil.
Oh yeah, I mean, but it's certainly headed in that direction. That the new EU leader has said that she is, effectively a climate change ambassador. She's really going to push for that. There's lots of movements going on around the world. The Holland have had protests going on over the last month, and the UK has had a lot of protests going on over the last month. And I think there is a lot of pressure on governments to start acting now. I don't think they're going to have the chance to look for the 2050. That's what that was the time frame that they were after. The 2050 sort of time frame. I don't think that they're going to have that opportunity to go for 2050. I think that there's going to be too much pressure for them to potentially aim at 2030, and that's 10 years away. And that means that there's got to be a significant change in people's outlook of using fossil fuels, and that looks to me like it's already started. The question is, do governments continue to fund it, and will they fund it aggressively enough to bring oil to its knees in the next I suppose 5 years, which is what we're interested in, really. I mean, we're obviously interested in every day, but every day makes up the longer term time frames, and it won't happen, I suppose, in the next 6 months. But the pressure is on, and I think that there are probably going to be quite a few people taking short positions in things like oil, with this suspicion that it could well be an out of date fossil fuel now. Never mind looking at the next 10 years' time. Because this as the monthly chart, this monthly chart broke to the downside again. It's come and met a really good area of confluence. It's met this trend line here. It's met a resistance point here on the chart where was the last level of support, and it started to move down again. And you know, this bar, you know, we're talking about the evening star. This is a lovely evening star in many respects. The first bar, sorry, the second bar of the evening star isn't brilliant because it doesn't look like a shooting star. It's you know, it's got too much body really. But it does, you know, it is acting like a shooting star in some respects, where it's pushed forward and shoved its way straight back down again. You know, it's 50% in. It could have done with being 2/3. But this bar is the real telling one. Opens at the same point, takes out the low of this bar, significantly takes out the range of the previous bar. So that in itself is suggesting downside with oil. If this monthly bar also is looking fairly bearish, then I think we could be traveling right back to the lows again, possibly down to 29. And as I say, I wouldn't be surprised at all if people start taking positions, longer term positions in oil to
The
try and.
Are very, very distinct on that chart, aren't they? The staircase it's a classic staircase and elevator situation that you got there. Everything, as soon as there's a sniff of a sell, bang, they're into it.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. You know, and you know, there was a fairly good move really with oil. Didn't test this area here, but it managed to get above this point and push forward from there. So there was a fairly elevated move really since last year. So you know, over a 12-month period from May to May, it was looking pretty good. But really, ever since then, we've seen some pressure on oil. Now, this is you know, a lot down to what's going on fundamentally, obviously, but there's no question that the oil is got a wider issue than just OPEC and Donald Trump and Iran.
Brunei readjusting his portfolio to include solar and wind.
Yeah, well, you've got BP already investing in renewables. You know, they're already sort of like trying to get a jump on things, because they probably recognise that that if they don't, they're going to end up like EMI. You know, in the record industry, what if you ignore what's really being told to you? And EMI were being told that the internet was going to take away pretty much all forms of musical platforms. Giving the ability to manipulate the market, then if you ignore it, then to your peril. And I suppose, you know, a company like BP, being the huge market cap that they are, probably recognise that there is a danger of that, and they don't want to get caught like that. So they've already started. Yeah, do you know? Talking of you know, getting ahead of the game. Do you know the other interesting stock? And it's a shame in some respects that we don't have an indice or some sort of instrument that we can trade this on. But the other interesting I'll have to call it commodity, because I can't think of any other word. But well, in fact, it probably would be a commodity, but it's tobacco. I find tobacco quite interesting too, because if you think about what's going on in the world and how unfashionable smoking has become, and with the birth of vape guns and really kind of, you know, health pushes to stop people smoking, then tobacco has also got to be another industry which is under huge pressure. So if we're thinking about what could change in the next, you know, 10 to 15 years, then I would say the use of fossil fuels is one of them. But the other thing is the use of tobacco, and you have to wonder whether a company like British American Tobacco, which you know, for so long has been a stalwart and one of the most highly traded companies of the FTSE 100, what's going to happen to companies like that? What are they doing to protect themselves? Because you can't really get into the you can't really get. What's that mean? Sorry.
Hemp is the only thing, I suppose, that's in their stratosphere, you know.
Hemp, yeah, I suppose you're right. Yeah, actually, you're probably right. That could be something that they could look at. I don't know how they diversify, because I think looking at the vaping industry, people can effectively make their own juice at home. You know, you only need a few ingredients to kind of get yourself going and up and underway, and so many people are doing it that I don't see how the tobacco industry can really combat that particular aspect. But they're going to have deep pockets if they're going to get into the hemp industry, because there are other companies, medical companies, probably more significantly, that are already heavily invested in that particular area. And I don't know. I'd have to look into what British American Tobacco are investing in, but that seems to me like another potential short opportunity. You know, anything with tobacco and oil could really be suffering.
Yeah, and let's not say for bad reason. I mean, that's a good thing at the end of the day. But if you're, and to be fair, over the years, if they haven't divested their interests, then they're fools, because that's been coming for a long time.
Absolutely.
The smoking movement's been a very, very, very strong thing around the world.
Now, did you have any other charts to look through?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm happy with what we've had a look at already. I don't see anything that's
well, let me show you something.
Potential.
Let me show you something. So yesterday we came up with a strategy, didn't we?
Well, we kind of did, yeah.
I think we have. Look at it.
On my other broker, and there's no gaps.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
So I was looking for this, and I think, okay, I'll have a look at this.
Well, let's have a look at it on my one, because our trade would have worked out to the tune of almost 2,000 pips.
What a bugger.
2,000 pips. I mean, let's say we didn't get in there, but we actually got in. We waited for the gap to close, so we got in here. That's still 1,500 pips.
Oh, I haven't had one of those this week.
I mean, in a day, it's crazy, isn't it? It's just But there's our trade, mate. There's our trade right there.
Happy days. We got another one today.
Not on this. I'll tell you what. The other thing I thought was quite interesting about the cryptocurrency world is that Bitcoin. And as I said before, I always watch the cryptocurrencies because of what my brother's invested in, and I get kind of concerned, sometimes, because we were away last week together because it was a family reunion in the Caribbean, so he was there as well, and he was telling some of the family about how he's invested in cryptos, and he was advising some of them to get into it, and he advised somebody last week to get into Ripple. Which isn't the worst cryptocurrency in the world. You know, they've at least got some fundamental aspects that look fairly solid in comparison to what else I can find with Bitcoin and Ethereum. But Bitcoin's had a really good run today, an explosive move to the upside, and then so far a fairly explosive move to the downside. Now, when we look at Ethereum, which is the other cryptocurrency that seems to be in vogue, the move to the upside maybe wasn't quite as pronounced, but it was there. But the move to the downside has been much more significant. You know, it's almost back to its lows. And another terrible story on this, obviously, is Ripple. And Ripple is back to its lows. So it didn't really move quite in the same aggressive nature that Bitcoin did. But when it moved to the downside, wow, did it go. It really did.
It really can't have anything to do with fundamentals. It's got nothing.
No, absolutely right. I mean, again, there was a little gap and go yesterday with Ripple as well. It looks to me like the gap strategy may well work with these the cryptocurrencies across the board. You know, if we just have a quick look back just to the start of the year, then we've got this one, gaps down, goes. Where's our next gap? Here, little gap to the upside, and it goes. Little gap to the downside. Probably would have got stopped out of that one. Gap to the downside, it goes. Gap to the downside, it goes. This one gaps the downside, but you would have got stopped out on that one fairly significantly. This one gaps the downside and it goes. Again, down and goes. That one gaps the downside and eventually, stops up here. I'm always thinking stops just above the bar that it goes from. That would have made money. This one would have made a huge amount of money. This one would have made some money eventually. Actually, yeah, I'm not sure actually whether he would have got stopped out of that one. Let's have a look. There's the area there. Yeah, may have got stopped out of that one, but you'd have had a chance to kind of take the trade off the table if it didn't quite go. That one gaps and goes. And maybe there's a rule of thumb here that if it doesn't go straight away, then that's the time to get out. That one gaps but doesn't go. This one gaps and goes. I suppose maybe that's the key, mate. Maybe we're looking for gap and go, and if it doesn't gap and go, then you need to get out, because some of them, when they turn around, they turn around and they would obliterate your account because of how emotive it is. So there could be a little bit more work to be done on it, but I still, that's a glaringly obvious trade right now, because it looks like at least 60 to 70% of the time it works out. Now the question is, does the time that it works out make up for the times that they don't work out, including where you get stopped out, because otherwise the strategy doesn't, it's going to fall straight on its sword, isn't it?
Well, I think you can probably work a way around that by going, okay, if it doesn't work the first time, you're in at, let's say, half of what your risk is. If it doesn't gap and go, and you get taken out of that half percentage, then you just place another trade underneath the bar that took you in. Because from what I've just seen through that very quick rush through there, if that is the case, if you get a second bite at it, it generally goes. But
yeah,
that's just looking at your charts.
Yeah.
Flick.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, I think there's probably, something like, I'll just take one that wouldn't have worked out. Let's say this one here that didn't work out. I'm sure if we kind of do just a little bit more work on it, then looking at the monthly, I can't look at the monthly, there's not enough data. Looking at the weekly at that point, you're probably not aiming for downside. It's already at a low, so you're probably not going to be looking for any downside down there anyway. Looking at the dailies on that particular time frame as well, you wouldn't be aiming for the downside, because it's started here and it's gapped down here, which is right on a level of support. So maybe just bringing in some other time frames would have actually helped some of these trades out. This one's different, isn't it? When that gaps to the upside, there's some room there.
What chart are you on there? What time frame?
Daily. This is XRP though.
What's XRP?
Yeah. This is Bitcoin.
Okay, I'm looking for XRP on my broker. There is a way to search for these things, isn't there? If I can find them.
Who's your other broker, out of interest?
Avatrade.
Okay, don't know those guys.
It's right underneath Ethereum and Bitcoin, of course.
There you go.
So if I go to Bitcoin and have a look at the daily chart, there's not one gap on my chart.
Interesting. What about the 4 hour?
Well, no gaps.
No gaps in the 4 hour.
No. So they must cover them. Surely not.
Yeah, that is interesting. Let me just see what the time that it gaps on this one is. Oh no, because the thing is, Bitcoin does stay open. That's why. That's why. That's because actually you can't trade Bitcoin over the weekend.
So they're all weekends.
It looks to me like they might well be. Yes, they are, mate.
Doesn't matter. Who cares?
No, but because now you know that what you're looking for is to see whether the price on Monday, if you mark off the closing price on Friday, what you want to see is whether the price on Monday is significantly higher or lower than the closing price of Friday, and that should give the trade. So, do you want to just quickly have a check of that? Is that because it's open on the weekend on that other broker?
Okay, so yeah, daily chart. We've got where's your first gap going backwards?
My most recent gap was yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay.
No, it couldn't have been yesterday. It would have been Monday.
So today's Wednesday, Monday, and
17th, 15th.
Okay, so we've got a gap this week, right? And that's Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, Friday. Okay, so we closed on Friday at 10.16301.
Let me see what that was. We closed on Friday at 11.897 on my chart. Now that's because this one closes. This one closes at 6 p.m. UK. Interestingly.
Well, that's going to be interesting. This one closes at 0.000. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to work that out.
Yeah, so it looks like it's going to be 6 p.m. UK, which is it's just an odd time of day actually, isn't it? Because there's still a. Let me just make sure that is the case. Let me just make sure that is the case on the hourly.
That's interesting.
No, it doesn't. Sorry, my mistake, mate. It closes when the American market closes. So whatever price it is when the American market closes is the close, and then it opens again at 10 o'clock on Sunday, 10 p.m. UK on Sunday, which is when the currency markets open. So it opens and closes at the same time as the currency markets.
Right, which
should be on your chart. Shouldn't have currency markets that close at midnight UK, GMT. They should close at 9 o'clock GMT.
Okay, open of a daily bar according to me.
Yeah. It basically, it's how you do it, like with the currency. So whatever time that the currency markets open and close is what you're looking at.
All right. Okay. I can work it out from there. Fair enough, mate. That'll be interesting. I like the look of that. Actually,
me too.
Cool. Where are we? Should I have a look, or you've got more to go?
No, mate. No, let's have a look. I was just going to say that that you'd obviously, we'll. It's a shame we haven't got a joint account, really, isn't it, mate? We could invest with this together. Yeah, we have to put quite a small amount on because it moves so viciously. You're not going to put probably even £1 a trade on if you're going to lose $1,000 every time it goes against you.
Well, it's the only way I would like to trade it is on a system like that. I wouldn't like to trade it out of any other reason. That's a fact. All right, let's take a look and see what's happening on the currency chart, shall we? I don't know. There'll be two. Maybe there's a bit of movement on the euro.
Did you check the news today, mate?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
And we've got CPI out of your place in about an hour.
Yep.
And we've got I think CAD CPI way later in the day as well.
That's right, 1:30. Yeah.
So the pound has, not surprisingly, of course, come back to test the breakout area, which is around about 124 mark. What happens next? It doesn't really interest me, to be fair. To trade this in any way, shape, or form be just so hard at the moment. So I'm not really thinking of it. Shame, because a pound Aussie in particular, I think, is at a really good place. And I was just on that chart, actually. You can see that we've come to the bottom of this channel relentless fall to the bottom of this channel. And we've picked up a bit of a support and resistance area here as well at the 176.80 odd mark. Great place for a bounce here. The daily pivot's there as well. But, to trade that, catching the falling knife is a very, very difficult proposition and something that I don't really entertain as a thought process. And I can also see, look at the strength of these bars here. It's just amazing. And why is that going to stop? What's going to stop that happening? I really don't know. And for that reason, it's just impossible to trade this long at present. That said, if there were to be a decent and significant reversal pattern on any time frame, then of course it's going to interest me. I would then start to look for a potential higher low. Would that candle alone be one of these potential reversals? Not in isolation, no. Because of where it is, maybe I'd pay a little bit of attention to it, but I'd like to see this hit resistance, maybe up here, then pull back and give us a higher low. That would be the only thing that would get me interested, and maybe you could look to trade it back to this level here. I'm not that keen, I've got to say. I'll wait until it actually does start to turn around. And the same could be said for euro pound. I'm a massive bear this and have been for yonks, but can't find a way in. This looks like an interesting area. We may be putting in a big double top here. If that were the case, then maybe a bounce off the daily pivot and a lower high here does get me interested, but tough call. Euro dollar.
Further astonishing moves, aren't they, with the euro pound?
Yeah. Oh, look, that's just been a sustained and I won't say painful, but it's frustrating because
yeah, I mean it's one of those, isn't it? As soon as there's an opportunity to get in with this, and I think we can probably wait for some genuine fundamental data, from the pound or something probably more political. Then the euro pound is the best possible candidate, because that is a crazy move in an opposite direction for a currency which really is fundamentally weak. You have to say the euro isn't a particularly good currency.
No, and this has been a tennis match really for the entire length and breadth of Brexit, I suppose. We have a look at the monthly chart and go back to Brexit, which is probably here somewhere. We're talking, up, down, not sure, down, up. It's been a bit of a ride really since that Brexit announcement. Pardon me. And every toss and turn has produced something different. But if you have a look at through here, really all you're seeing is a whole lot of indecision in this consolidation area. And for that move, as you say, Ash, to be as strong and protracted as it is, I guess in context, if you go back to here, it's only minuscule. And what happened? Brexit wasn't announced in March of 2015. What happened there?
Yes, it was, but yeah, that was the point that Cameron said that he would give he would give an election. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so once it settled down, you can see it settled down into that range, and it really hasn't gone anywhere since. So here we are again, back to the top of it, and I guess significantly, if that was indeed the Brexit reaction, which it was, then we haven't been able, apart from this mini breakout here. Be interesting to know what that particular time frame was and what caused that. But we really haven't been able to break through the 90-cent mark really at the end of the day. And I can't see any reason why we would do that now. But just to jump in here and go short is probably something that I don't want to do again. It's trying to pin a cloud down, and no, not for me. As I said, euro dollar is coming off its lows at the moment. That was to be expected, as I said before, and where that ends today is probably a very good guess. You're looking at a potential double bottom, tweezer bottom sitting here at a support level. Whether that's able to get through the daily pivot and this descending trend line is another story. Guesswork. Really don't know. Have absolutely no idea because it's got a case, and I made a case yesterday for both parties, and I think that's still the case here today. Until this level goes, this support level that we spoke about before, then anything can really happen. A little bit disappointed here in CAD yen. It didn't really give me what I was looking for, and that was a bounce off the daily pivot and the weekly pivot. Come down here and put in a significant higher low, and that would have been my trigger to go long. That's not out of the question yet, but it needs to get a hurry on because otherwise it's just going to go and go and go and go, and I don't want that to happen. So down here is where we need to be. Aussie yen. I didn't really look at that before, but again, it's got a nice market structure for me, and doesn't look too dusty here at the moment. To be fair, on the 30-minute chart, it has come back inside after having 1, 2, 3, 4 attempts to actually break to the high side here. If this were to reject the top of this range now with this bar, that does look interesting to me. We have already had a break. I can't really say we've had a retest of the daily pivot. That's a little bit of a concern. I would prefer that to have been the case, but let's keep our eye on that. And if towards the top of the hour we've got a candle that is, let's say, 3 or 4 times the size of this one, in fact, that would be good, wouldn't it? Let's say we got up to the daily pivot and then pulled back and closed underneath here. That would be a pretty good bar to trade. So I'll keep my eye on that. Aussie US dollar. Not real sure what to expect from Aussie US dollar at the moment because of this level that we've got dead ahead. And I was really hoping that we'd test that level so we could look for a selling opportunity. I suppose what we really have here. Let me turn that off. There we go. Sorry about that. What we really have to ask ourselves here is, has this got another leg in it? And are we at a support level that can't be denied? A resistance level that can't be denied. I'd really like to see this retrace to the weekly pivot before I look to play it long to here, but anything is possible, of course. Can I trade it short at this point? Well, we do have a double top sitting here. If we were to come back and retest this level here, 70.23-ish in the daily pivot, and put in a reversal bar, then I can't see any reason why I wouldn't want to trade to the weekly pivot. But you've got to take into consideration that this is a pretty strong move. So just be careful with that. But I think that's a potential trade short on the Aussie. I don't think I need to go too much further, mate. Have you got anything?
I don't really know. The FTSE is coming under some pressure here. I am finding it quite interesting with the FTSE because the FTSE has really been sort of something that I've been looking at for quite some time for a decent protracted move to the downside, not just something in a range. And we moved to these highs. Now, this was a fascinating move in many respects because I'm going to show you. Now, I was still bearish all the way through this. I was a little bit concerned. I did take a little trade to the downside. I was a little bit concerned because this one started to push forward. And I also I took a long. Where was my long? I think my long was off this bar or something. And as it moved to the upside, I saw a fairly strong area of resistance. I'm not sure if it was along there or maybe a little bit high. I think it was along that point there. And I took he was there. I took my profit as it started to dip down a little bit. It started to break through here. So I took profit and I was kicking myself because I saw this going up and I was looking. I'll tell you what I was looking at was the S&P because I was looking at this move forward and thinking, this doesn't look to me like it's got any support for a move to the upside. And we're looking at global economies. Why is the FTSE moving higher when everything else is actually under pressure? And when we consider what happened with the S&P, which I'll show you the chart of, is with this one under pressure. This is what was going on with the S&P at the same time. I'll mark off the time, and you can see that the FTSE 100 was pushing up while the S&P was fairly stationary, and if anything was under a little bit of pressure to the downside, and it eventually did collapse. So I was watching that FTSE kind of perturbed of what was going on, and getting a little bit concerned that there was, actually a further move to the upside, because we still haven't touched this level up here. And there's two ways that I would see a move to the downside happening, as I said to you before, either from this point or what now looks to be this point here. So I wasn't really looking for any resistance here, and there's a pretty thin line over here that provided that resistance. I'm not sure if you can see my charts that clearly because they're a bit small there, but you can see it probably easier on the 4 hour. And there's no real level here. I suppose the 4 hour is probably there. So that was the point that I was looking for that resistance to happen. And it didn't come to fruition, but then all of a sudden it did start to break down. And the interesting thing for me with the FTSE is that while that did break down, there's always a chance that breakdown just becomes a return to the previous breakout, and then we start to move to the upside again. So then we got this bar in the Asian session, and the FTSE has attempted to push forward, but look at it now. It's now back under pressure. And this is the current hourly bar, which we are 18 minutes away from closing down. That's the current hourly bar. And I'm interested to see what happens here, because with an hourly bar that looks like this, that is suggesting that this whole area is an area to try and attempt that short. If the hourly bar ends up like that. Now, we can only try and ascertain if it's going to by looking at what's going on with the 5 and 15. the 15's popped its head up and is in a current uptrend with a test. The test bar isn't looking too attractive to trade from. The 5 looks a little bit different at this particular point. Got a couple of minutes before this bar closes, but still looks like it's going to attempt to move back to the upside at this stage. So let's see what happens with that. But if the 5, 15, and hourly all look like they've attempted to move forward and they are unable to do so, this is looking like a trade to the downside for me. And I wonder whether it actually becomes something more significant, because when I go back to my dailies, even though this bar isn't fantastic, it does show some weakness, some slight weakening up there, and we get something of a trend line break. It's fairly extreme, but something of a trend line break may be going on here. Looking at the 4 hour just to try and get a bit of detail on that, it doesn't look quite as attractive, but it's still around the level. This is what we got on the 4 hour. So it's around that level, of the break. So a bar that looks weak on the 4 hour would suggest that maybe a break of the lows and we're coming down. And as I say, this gap, as I said before, is a beacon of a target. And if this is the case, if the gap does become a beacon of a target and we can get in somewhere around this point or this point, somewhere in this area, that puts stops at around about 50 pips with a target of near a 2-to-1. But you're probably looking for that gap to be a little bit more, for a little bit more follow through to the low of the gap. So you could be looking at a 3-to-1 trade here, off the back of some weakness here. So I'm watching the FTSE with some fascination. Now, not only are we going to get an hourly bar, we're also going to get obviously the 5 and the 15, but we're also going to get the 4 hourly bar closing. And and as I said before, we only have to go back to the daily to understand what I'm really trying to aim for here. Now,
something on as you got through the gap, just in case this is the beginning of a major.
Say that again, mate. Sorry.
You leave something on the table. Through the gap.
Yeah. You absolutely do. I mean, I'd say you leave it all on the table right the way down and see if you can actually pick up an hourly trend with putting the stops at the highs of each swing. I think would be a decent way to play it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You could take half, maybe at this particular point, and then see if you can do the same thing with those hourly swings. Might be a better way to do it actually, because at least that way you might even be able to add if there's a pop to the upside, put the half back on again and see if it does continue to fall. But yeah, I would say so. And the reason that I would say that is that if this does come down and ends the week fairly negatively, that is going to be a combination of two bearish looking bars up here. And if we get two bearish looking bars of the next this week and last week, that would suggest that the final week would also be a push to the downside. And that way we're going to see a monthly shooting star. So, you know, there are possibilities that this really could go. Now we're looking way into the future here, and there's a lot of summation with that particular you know, following that particular strategy, and we've still got to, you know, see this 4 hourly and hourly bar shape up. But yeah, I think that there is a potential for a protracted move. And as you know, as I keep pointing out, whether we call this a head and shoulders or we call it a diamond pattern, it's still a potential for some distribution here if we get this shooting star. So I'm looking at that, mate, very, very closely. Because if we do get the shooting star up here, then yeah, you could take half off and forget adding on any hourly retracements. You could just wait for the monthly to break down and add again, because you know, by that point you'd be well and truly in profit.
Profit, that's a good word, that.
Yeah, we like it, don't we? We like it. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing is that the FTSE's always at danger of popping up, but I just look at this chart and there's so many things that are out there that suggest to me that that we are near a high. Now, picking that high is proving to be incredibly tricky. You know, I've tried on several occasions to try and pick the high, and I've got to be honest, I've taken some profit out of the market this month, but I'm still negative net because because I've got so many open trades to the downside. I'm still working on those trades that we were talking about last month. You know, they're still sat there in the market. Mm-hmm. So I have, you know, I am attempting to pick these highs, and the way that I'm making money is with the hedge. You know, I put on a hedge to the upside, and then I close the position off when it's back up again, and that's how that's been rolling. But I could do with some downside, but if I can also get an entry up here, a decent entry up here to get a decent amount of profit for all those ones that are down the lows. I'm not really looking at those lows anymore as possibilities for balancing balancing the account. I'm actually looking to if I can, I'd like to leave those open, because if this pattern does play out, then we're all the way back down here again, and that would just make my year, you know, possibly even my 2 years. I don't know. Let me see. If we got all the way down there, then you are looking at 1,500 pips. You know, all the way down to that point. So that would be a that would be a fair whack of profit if that came in. So you know, I'm not saying that I will have the wherewithal to trade it that way, but I'd love to at least attempt it.
Well, the plan's there, mate.
Yeah.
You know what you have to do. So if everything falls into place, then why not? And you know, we know that this will not keep going and going and going. We just know that. But the one thing that we don't know is when and where. Which is always,
yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and the thing is, you know, because we've got this business cycle, you know, going on, and the Fed are trying to fight what, if you like, science has always provided in the past, because science has always provided a specific time period for a business cycle, and that's normally 5 to 7 years, and this one's been going on for 10. So do they really manage to see this one off? I don't know. Maybe they do, but what does that mean? That we end up with a 20-year business cycle to the upside? I don't know, but you know, you'd think that with an extra third, and it's, you know, in many cases of a business cycle with an extra 100% longer business cycle with this one, you've got to suggest that there's got to be a protracted move at some point that lasts, and there's geopolitical issues out there. We have the most unpredictable and volatile president possibly in history, not knowing the American history. I can't say that with any real confidence, but I think I can be fairly confident to say. Yeah. So you know we've got all that going on, and we've also got a slowing of global growth, and this is the thing with it. If you've got a slowing of global growth, and you've got this unpredictable president who's willing to put tariffs on the EU and willing to put the tariffs on on China, and potentially take on Iran, causing some world instability, then it would suggest that that slowing of growth would have a fire, a cracker up its backside to get it going. And if that was the case, then we could be looking at some downside. But we can't fail to remember that what happened last time was a collapse of one of the huge banks with the Lehman Brothers. So what we're waiting for is one of the businesses to collapse, I suppose, if we're going to see something that really does turn into a genuine bearish recession, or a genuine financial crash. We'd have to see a big business go under. Now we've discussed oil, we've discussed British American tobacco, that they are big enough commodities that would drag in a lot of big companies. That could cause some sort of recession with a knock-on effect that it would have on other companies. So there's possibilities out there. I don't know whether that would be it, but there's possibilities out there. That there are probably other ones that I don't know about as well, that could be out there too. So who knows? Who knows what's going to be the catalyst this time? But it could happen.
Where are the little flags? Where are the little flags that we need to be putting in the sand and going, okay, if this happens, then look out. If that happens, look out. Because there's so many different, as you've just pointed out, there are so many different things this time around, if I can put it that way. Last time around, nobody saw it coming, really.
Yeah.
And the S&P 500 just kept getting higher and higher and higher. Everyone said this has got to turn around.
Yeah.
I see very, very similar things in that regard, but the one thing I don't see is how this all pans out. I really have absolutely no idea.
No, it's difficult, isn't it? And you have to trust the charts, but it can be tricky to trust the charts when you have this view. And in truth, the charts, the way I'm looking at them, are actually showing slightly different messages. I am seeing some shorter term timeframes still suggesting that there's further upside, but the longer term timeframes to me look like they're under pressure.
Okay. Well, guess what, mate? I don't think anything's going to change dramatically overnight, but you just never know. And I'm just about ready to call it quits, I think.
Good stuff, mate. Me too. Sounds good to me. Well, let's be back same trade time, same trade channel tomorrow, and do it all again and see if there is any move to the downside with the FTSE. I'd love to see it, but there's still a possibility that some upside it will have to be traded. Even at this late stage. So we'll see how it pans out. But let's get together tomorrow and see if either one has actually become a bit clearer.
All right, mate, let's do that, and have a good day, and we will catch you tomorrow, as you say, at the same trade time and the same trade channel. Have a good one, everyone. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye for now.